A weekend retreat to a quaint forest cabin curdles into a waking nightmare when subtle tapping on the window grows into a siege by something that leaves dead offerings, clawed trees, and footprints that start outside and end at the bed. I rent an old-fashioned cabin for the weekend. One room, one fireplace, one promise, quiet. The road in is a thread through black pines. Rain clouds squat low, and the air has that clean, metallic sharpness of a place that doesn't like to be disturbed. Inside, aged boards, mismatched chairs, a stone hearth so old it has its own smell of ash and winter. The place feels safe, in the way forgotten places sometimes do. I unpack, cook, listen to the roof, take the night's first fingers of rain. The cabin space is a single breath. Bed, kitchenette, a small couch, curtains drawn tight against the dark. By the time the storm settles to a soft patter, the cabin hums with white noise. I lie down. The glow of my phone fades. Sleep takes me quickly. It isn't a dream that pulls me up. It's a feeling, primitive, sour in the gut, like stepping onto a stair that isn't there. My eyes open to a room that looks exactly as I left it, but the air is wrong. Thicker, charged. The rain shushes the windows, even and soothing. No footsteps, no voices, but I am certain, bone-deep certain, that I am being watched from somewhere just beyond the glass. No. Da. A faint, rhythmic tap, then another. Not random patter, intervals, like a finger testing glass for a response. I sit up and the mattress whispers. The tapping stops. I lift my phone. Its cold light cuts a pale tunnel across floorboards silvery with condensation. I move, bare feet on cold wood, checking the couch, the kitchenette, the fireplace throat. Silence swallows everything. I go to the back window, the one that faces the trees. The curtain is heavy, damp at the hem. I pinch the fabric and draw it an inch. Rain warps the world outside into a dark river. The forest is a wall of vertical shadows. I almost close it. Then my light skates over the floorboards below the sill and catches a trail of wet, thin as breath, beading into half-moons of mud. Barefoot prints. Small. Human.tau. They arc from the door to the window and stall beneath the curtain, then vanish, as if the last step never needed the floor. I freeze. The room shrinks. Water ticks from the curtain onto the wood, but the curtain is dry above my hand. I whisper a laugh that doesn't sound like me. I open the door to the covered stoop, intending to prove myself wrong. Rain drifts sideways, a fine, needling mist. There, on the welcome mat, lies a small black crow, arranged with impossible neatness. Neck broken, wings folded, head tilted toward the door. Not fallen, placed. Beyond the stoop, the mud churns to a slurry of boot prints from earlier travelers. But cutting across them, clearly visible, is a single path of naked feet coming from the tree line, stopping at my step, and turning back again. The spacing is wrong. Too close together. As if the walker were leaning forward the entire time. I step back inside and close the door quietly, like that matters. I can't help it. I look through a different window toward the nearest pine. The phone's light reaches only so far, but it finds gouges in the bark, long and parallel, the kind that sink into the living wood. Sap beads in pale tears. There are more, on the second tree, and the third, each set higher than my reach. Whatever marked them was tall, or climbed. A draft moves through the cabin, as if the building let out a breath. No. I sit on the bed and watch the windows. Time folds. The room is a circle of waiting. Then, barely audible under the rain, I hear a murmur. Not quite language. Like someone practicing a word they can't shape. Something leans against the back window. The pane fogs. A soft flower blooming from the center. In the fog, a handprint appears. Long palm, narrow fingers. No holes, no ridges, too smooth. It presses, slides an inch down the glass, and vanishes when the condensation runs. I don't move for the rest of the night. The tapping never returns. The feeling never leaves. Nin. At dawn, the rain is only a memory in the smell of wet wood. I tell the owner casually, like a funny story I am not part of. He doesn't blink. He nods, as if I've mentioned the color of the curtains. A few months back, he says, someone got 3 knocks, heavy ones. Shook the door, didn't open. Next morning, the frame was splintered like it was tested by a sledge. Nobody called the police. Folks get nervous, you know. He smiles without teeth. I don't like spooking customers. He doesn't ask if I slept well. He doesn't ask if I'm staying. Oh, Penisi. Daylight feels like a lie, but I use it. I circle the cabin. The crow is gone. In the mud at the forest's lip, bare footprints multiply. Some fresh, some softened by rain. They circle the cabin, avoid the door, double back on themselves like someone pacing a line they can't cross. Farther in, I find a birch scarred with claw marks, 5 deep cuts tapering upward. Beside them, faint in the lichen, is what looks like a palm pressed into bark. Not a hand. Hands have structure. This print is wide, soft-edged, as if pressed by something that learned the shape, but not the bone. A low branch holds a strip of fabric, damp and colorless, knotted in a loop. It flutters once. The air smells briefly of iron. Back inside, I notice the oddities. A horseshoe nailed upside down above the door. A thin line of salt crusted along the windowsill, interrupted only where the curtain brushes. A small, empty nail hole on the frame, as if something once hung there and was taken down. I'm suddenly aware that the cabin is less a home than a trap with rules. And at some point, recently, someone moved a piece. Ow. Ah. Clouds stack again by late afternoon. The forest goes dark by degrees, and with it, my nerve. I decide, stupidly, not to leave. I drag the couch to face the back window. I keep my phone plugged in. I tell myself I'll just watch. The rain begins anew, patient and sure. As if in answer, the first tap arrives. Gentle, deliberate. The next one comes exactly as my heart rate settles. I count the seconds between. They are even. I hold the curtain closed with 2 fingers. The fabric feels colder than the room. The tapping stops. A minute passes. 2. Don't know. Then... knock. It comes from the door. Heavy, resonant. A fist that knows my name. Knock. The frame trembles. Dust loosens in the ceiling seam. Knock. High. The last one is a command. Wood fibers cry. A hairline crack opens by the latch. I don't breathe. The door stops shaking. The silence swells. A whisper rises at the back window, clearer now, as if the speaker is closer to language. See. The curtain pulses inward once, as if someone exhaled against it from the other side. Wah, one four. I understand, too late, that the knocks are not to be answered. They are a distraction. The thing at the door is not the thing at the window. Or maybe it is, moving faster than I can count. Something drips onto my wrist. I look up. The curtain hem is wet. It shouldn't be. There is no leak. The water smells of pine sap and something old. The fabric pulls against my fingers, gently, like a dog testing a leash. The whisper again behind the glass, no longer a suggestion but a shape. Look. I do not. Nemo. Time slows into a tight coil. The knocks don't return. Instead, there's a scraping across the porch, like claws testing grain. A second handprint flowers in fog on the pane, higher than the first. Then a third, upside down, as if something hung there, looking in. I stare at the corner of the curtain and count my breaths. At some point, I notice something I shouldn't. The faintest damp toe prints on the floorboards, a foot's worth from the bed. They're moving toward the window, not away. The wood around them is dry. The prints themselves glisten as if they were made just now by a foot that isn't here. I don't move. I don't blink. I wait for dawn to peel the night away. Gah. The light comes as a mercy without warmth. The porch is empty. The door looks normal until you see the hairline cracks radiating from the latch like frost. The salt line on the back sill is parted in a neat crescent gap. In the break, a single pine needle sits upright, as if planted. Above the window, tucked into the frame where the wall meets the trim, I find a knot of black hair. Not fur, not human exactly, coarse, slightly damp, and smelling faintly of smoke. I gather my things with hands that won't stop shaking. Nah, I know. I tell the owner I'm leaving a day early. He nods like men nod at weather. Some places, he says lightly, don't like to be looked at. He runs a thumb along the counter, collecting a line of sawdust. You didn't open the curtain, did you? I don't answer. He smiles at the non-answer. Good, he says, and turns to a tool drawer. You should go before the road gets slick. As I leave, I see it. A small drawstring pouch of salt hanging behind his office door, and a window where the curtain rod is bolted to the studs. Nee. The path out is a tunnel of wet green. In the rearview mirror, the cabin shrinks to a square of shadow, then to a vertical line between trees. Just before the bend takes it away, the back curtain. The one I held, the one that wanted my hand, lifts in the still air, a small, tidy movement, as if fingers have pinched the fabric and released it. I do not stop. Nah. I can pretend it was animals. I can invent a prankster with time and patience and a bag of crows. I can tell myself the prints were mine, smeared by rain, and the hair a broom's lost bristle. But know what I felt in that first second of waking. The sense of a mind outside mine, pressed to the glass, practicing a word. I know what the owner didn't have to say, and I know this most of all. The tapping wasn't the wind. The knocks weren't an invitation. They were an instruction. The thing at the glass doesn't want to come in. It wants you to look. And if I had drawn the curtain 3 seconds earlier, I would not be here to tell you that. Later, at home, rain beads on my apartment window. In the fog, my hand leaves behind. A second handprint appears beside mine. Long palm, narrow fingers, sliding down the glass before the condensation runs. Then, nothing. Only my own breath and the quiet knock of a neighbor's door somewhere down the hall. Tap, dot, dot. Husky. The night wind swept across the Nevada desert, carrying with it a chill and the tang of rusted metal from ruins half buried in the sand. In the distance, the dark silhouette of an abandoned military facility loomed, a scar from an era when America buried its deepest secrets. In that place, silence was never complete. There were always faint sounds rising from beneath the earth. Whispers that blurred the line between wind and human voice. They say that anyone who stops to listen too long will never remain themselves. And once the sand has swallowed a secret, it never gives it back. The afternoon sun scorched the Nevada desert like a heated blade, slicing through every grain of parched sand. The old pickup truck rattled as it bounced along rugged trails, leaving behind a long plume of dust like smoke in the air. Inside were 4 figures. Jackson, the weathered treasure hunter, his eyes etched with fatigue. Claire, the young archaeologist clutching a bundle of old documents on forgotten test facilities. Miguel, the resourceful engineer who never let go of his toolbox. And Travis, the lanky local guide whose gait... They had come chasing a rumor. Hidden deep within the restricted lands near Area 51 lay an abandoned military depot, a place where technologies too dangerous to speak of had once been tested. Whispers claimed that somewhere inside was a piece of cargo, never meant to see daylight, something powerful enough to change the life of anyone who found it. For Jackson, it was a last chance to escape a trail of failed expeditions. For Claire, it was the lure of historical truth. For Miguel, it was simply a paying job. As for Travis, no one truly knew what he sought. The truck ground to a halt in a clearing between sand dunes, where rusted metal frames jutted out like the bones of some ancient beast. The stillness was so absolute that every breath seemed to echo in their ears. As the group advanced, Travis froze, tilting his head as if listening. "Hear that?" he murmured. No one answered. Only the hiss of wind scraping across the sand replied. Then Claire spotted it, a metal hatch half buried in the dune. It was as large as a bunker door, its steel surface scarred with scratches. When Miguel rapped it with his knuckles, the sound rang deep and hollow, accompanied by something stranger. A faint undertone, like whispers rising from below, uncertain whether it was mere echo or a human voice. The group fell silent. In the vast emptiness of the desert, quiet was no longer just quiet. Jackson tightened his grip on the flashlight, eyes locked on the darkness beneath the hatch. He knew every journey reached a point of no return, and they had just crossed it. Aye! Sand crunched underfoot as the group gathered around the steel hatch. Miguel gripped his crowbar and flashlight, sweat streaming down his face even though the sun had already dipped below the horizon. The screech of metal tore through the silence as rusted fragments flaked away. When the hatch finally gave, a rush of cold air surged upward, carrying with it a pungent odor, half the dampness of earth long buried, half the acrid tang of scorched metal. Beneath lay a staircase spiraling into the earth. The flashlight swept across cracked concrete steps, their faded yellow warning paint peeling into nothing. Jackson led the way, each footfall echoing hollowly, as if the depths below were a vast, empty void. The stairwell opened into a corridor, pitch black and stretching endlessly forward. On the walls were strange markings, smeared in faded red paint. Claire leaned closer, eyes gleaming with curiosity. Not English, not Latin either. Her voice trembled as she scribbled notes into her journal. They pushed deeper. Along the passageway, heavy steel doors lined the walls, most sealed with military padlocks. Some rooms lay open, filled with shattered machinery, charred cables, and broken metal tables. On the walls hung battered signs: Test Chamber 3, Containment, Access Restricted, all clawed and defaced, as though some unseen hand had tried to erase them. Travis was the first to halt. He stood frozen, head cocked, ear tilted toward the darkness ahead. "Don't you hear it?" he whispered, voice low and distant. The others exchanged uneasy looks. Only the faint hiss of wind seeped through cracks. But when they strained to listen, Jackson stiffened. From deep within the corridor came faint murmurings, a tangled chorus of voices speaking low. Too many, too indistinct to belong to any single language. Claire clutched her ears, her face pale. It's inside my head." They pressed on, the whispers growing sharper with each step. At the corridor's end, a massive circle loomed against the wall, a structure of metal fused into concrete, its surface etched with hundreds of symbols, part machinery, part incantation. Broken components jutted outward, exposing charred wires and blackened steel. Miguel stepped closer, pressing his hand to the surface. The metal was ice cold, but almost instantly he recoiled, gasping. I heard it. It said my name." No one had time to respond before the atmosphere shifted. The whispers swelled, multiplying. Dozens, hundreds of voices speaking all at once, rising from beneath the ground. Dust rained from the cracked ceiling, the floor trembling faintly as if something beneath was stirring. Jackson grabbed Claire and pulled her back, his heartbeat thundering in his chest. He realized then what they had done. This hatch had never been just a military door. It was a seal, and they had just broken it. For a single heartbeat, the voices fell silent. And then, in unison, they spoke one phrase that echoed through the corridor. "We can be heard again." The air in the bunker shifted sharply. Cold wind surged from the depths, carrying the stench of rotting earth and the metallic tang of rust. Flashlights flickered, and the darkness seemed to breathe. Jackson led the way, his steps heavy, weighted by dread. The whispers no longer came from afar. They pierced straight into his mind, calling his name in 100 voices. Men, women, children, all merging into a dreadful chorus. Claire trembled, clutching her notebook tight. Shadows in old military uniforms drifted past her, faces warped, eyes hollow, skin sagging like melting wax. They did not touch her, but the stench of scorched flesh churned her stomach. Suddenly, Travis halted, lips moving soundlessly. Jackson grabbed his arm, but Travis tore free, his eyes clouding over. "They are calling me. I belong to them. Miguel swung another flashlight beam into a nearby room. The floor was littered with rotting documents. He snatched a few still legible. Project Whisperer. Subject, failed containment. Abort. Scattered among them were black and white photographs. Soldiers with blank white eyes, their bodies cracked and splitting, their skin dry as sand. At their feet was a red containment circle, annotated with, "Never break the seal." Then Travis laughed, a dry, rasping sound. Blood streamed from the corners of his eyes, his skin fracturing like shattering glass. A pale red glow pulsed beneath his flesh. When he lifted his head, his eyes blazed like twin shards of a blood moon. Claire screamed. Jackson seized her hand and pulled her away. Travis did not chase with footsteps. He glided, his voice echoing through the corridor walls. "Don't leave me. We are one." The three of them fled down the corridor, but space itself twisted. Paths bent, doors vanished, sand trickled from the cracking ceiling. Claire froze, staring at the walls. Dozens of human faces bulged from the concrete, lips moving in unison with the whispers. They writhed, then melted, leaving only swirling black hollows. Miguel suddenly clutched his chest, gasping. Black veins crawled across his skin, spreading like wildfire. He howled, but his voice warped, merging with the chorus. As Jackson tried to pull him, Miguel's skin flaked away like dried sand. His bones stretched unnaturally. Blood congealed into glistening black crystals. Miguel collapsed, his body reshaping into a half-human, half-sand monstrosity. Jackson let go, dragging Claire as they bolted forward. Behind them, Miguel's heavy, monstrous steps thundered, mingling with Travis's echoing laughter. They stumbled upon a skeleton in a tattered uniform, clutching a half-burnt journal. Jackson ripped it free, flipping through charred pages. The words that remained clawed at his mind. The seal holds only with intact blood sacrifice. If broken, the entity merges with earth and wind. Do not listen. But it was too late. The whispers consumed their thoughts, no longer just background noise, but woven into their veins, their breath, their heartbeat. Jackson knew that with every second, they were becoming part of the sealed entity itself. When he looked into Claire's eyes, he saw more than fear reflected there. He saw the vision of a barren desert, lifeless, endless, nothing left but wind, sand, and the eternal whispers. Nay. Travis's twisted laughter echoed through the bunker, blending with the heavy, monstrous footsteps of the deformed Miguel. Jackson pulled Claire forward, but the corridors bent and twisted endlessly, warping into impossible shapes. Their flashlight beams danced over walls crowded with countless faces of sand, all whispering in unison. A violent explosion cracked through the air. The ground beneath them split open, revealing a gaping chasm. From below surged a vortex of glowing red sand, swirling like molten blood. Hundreds of withered hands clawed upward, raking at the air, while mouths whispered together, "Stay. Feed us." Jackson and Claire clung to a rusted metal beam as the updraft roared, a wind so fierce it felt like it could strip the skin from their bones. Across the chasm, Travis appeared, his body fissured, his blood glowing crimson. He spread his arms wide, his voice thundering through the cavern. "You don't understand. This is the return. The entity only needs to open its eyes." And then he hurled himself into the vortex. His body shattered into 100 fragments, merging with the storm of sand. From the depths, a colossal pair of crimson eyes opened, forcing every gaze toward them. Jackson reeled as visions tore into his mind. Soldiers of a century past, setting themselves ablaze to seal the monster. Entire towns erased from maps to bury the secret. Claire broke down, sobbing, whispering, "We can't stop it." Grinding his teeth, Jackson dragged her toward a rusted doorway that had appeared in the wall. They stumbled through, collapsing into a chamber vast as an underground chapel. On its cracked stone walls stretched the remnants of a blood-drawn seal, fractured and fading. At the center lay a shattered altar, iron restraints still clinging to its edges. Claire whispered in awe and terror. This is where they imprisoned it." Suddenly, Miguel staggered in from the opposite entrance. His body was half man, half sand and bone, every step shaking the ground. But in his clouded eyes flickered a momentary spark of clarity. Miguel's voice tore through the chamber, ragged and thunderous. "Run! It will use me as the vessel." Then his body ruptured, exploding into a whirlwind of crimson sand that wrapped itself around the broken seal. Cracks spread wider, red light erupting upward, flooding the chamber in a blinding glow. Jackson clutched Claire tightly, his heart hammering. He knew the truth now. What had been sealed for centuries was awakening, and only they remained standing before it, drowned in the darkness, swallowed by the endless whispers. Yeah. The chamber shook violently, glowing red fissures spreading across the floor like massive veins. The whispers grew deafening, no longer faint murmurs, but thousands of voices screaming inside their skulls. Jackson collapsed to his knees, blood trickling from his ears and nose. Claire clutched his arm, her eyes bloodshot, her voice trembling. We can't escape. It needs a sacrifice. If not..." Chunks of ceiling crashed down. The seal on the floor split open, and from the cracks rose countless withered hands. In the heart of the crimson storm, a pair of colossal eyes widened, fixing on them. Each gaze seared their flesh, choking Jackson with agony. In the chaos, visions overwhelmed him. Soldiers willingly burning themselves in this bunker, their blood painting the seal. Villagers turning to ash to contain the entity. Generations burying the truth, all to prevent this moment. He understood. Blood was the key to closing the seal. The final blood had to be human. Jackson turned to Claire. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, don't. I can't lose you." A faint, weary smile crossed his lips. He pressed her trembling hands around the charred journal they had found. The last legible words burned into her vision. When all else fails, a living heart may close the door. Before she could stop him, Jackson hurled himself into the fractured seal. Sand engulfed him, unseen claws shredding his skin, but he roared through the torment, forcing his bleeding hand down into the earth. A blinding red light flared. The whispers turned into shrieks of anguish, then faded into silence. The withered hands crumbled into dust, the seal glowing one final time before sealing shut. The chamber fell quiet. The wind from the abyss ceased. Claire collapsed, sobbing, staring at the empty space where Jackson had stood. Only red sand remained, silent, as though nothing had happened. She staggered out of the tunnels. Dawn was breaking over the desert. The sun rose, blood red against the horizon. But its light did not bring life. It only echoed the fire that had consumed him. And in the stillness of the morning, Claire heard it, the faintest sound beneath the sand. Not the wind, a whisper, familiar, dotty, persistent. It had not vanished. It had only gone back to sleep, waiting for another day. Wow! In a forsaken graveyard of New England, no trees of wood take root. Instead, they rise from human bone, ribs twisting into skeletal branches, skulls swaying like pale, hollow fruit. Among them moves the gravekeeper, an ancient shadow, silently tending his garden of the damned. Each soul of the unfortunate, once sown, blossoms into another tree of bone, feeding the forest that should never have been. Nen Pasi. The fog of New England clung to the earth like a burial shroud, veiling the narrow path that wound up the hill where the old cemetery lay. Michael Hale, a man in his 40s, walked slowly, one hand gripping a weathered leather notebook. An archaeologist by trade, he had little patience for folklore. To him, this graveyard was nothing more than a forgotten relic of the 17th century. Before arriving, Michael had heard the villagers' strange warnings. They told him never to set foot on the hill after sunset. They whispered of pale figures gliding through the mist, of groans rising from beneath the earth, of trees that grew not from wood but from bone. He had laughed, dismissing their words as superstition woven from fear. But the suffocating silence here gnawed at his certainty. At the crest of the hill, Michael stopped before a gate of blackened iron, rusted and twisted. The carvings of crossed bones were nearly worn away. A stone tablet bore a fading Latin inscription, Hic silentis locantur. Here, the silent still speak. He pressed his hand against the gate, the chill bit like metal drawn straight from ice. Inside stretched a garden of the dead. Tombstones leaned and fractured, their inscriptions lost to moss. Weeds choked the soil, yet here and there, pale shapes jutted from the earth like limestone shards. Michael crouched and realized they were fragments of bone, disturbingly clean, as though placed there deliberately rather than left to decay beneath the soil. Michael opened his notebook and began to record everything. The shape of graves, the weathered symbols, even the position of the bones. Then came a creak, sharp, deliberate. Michael's head snapped up. Across the cemetery, near the largest tomb, stood a figure. The fading light sketched a gaunt old man with a hunched back, a long coat trailing the ground, and a rusted spade in his hand. He did not move, yet his sunken eyes seemed fixed on Michael from within the hollow dark of their sockets. Michael swallowed hard. He had not expected a caretaker. Relief should have come, but instead, a cold shiver clawed its way down his spine. The old man's body did not shift, yet the creak came again, like a gate closing of its own accord. Michael turned. The iron gate stood shut behind him, silent and immovable, as if it had never opened at all. Ah! Michael instinctively stepped back as the old man advanced. His black coat dragged across the wet grass, with a sound like bones grinding together. The hollows of his eyes were deep and sunken, his stare pressing against Michael's chest, as if trying to pierce straight through him. "Night has fallen," the man rasped, his voice corroded like rusted iron. "This place does not belong to the living." Michael forced himself to remain steady. He raised the worn leather notebook, his tone firm. "I'm an archaeologist. I'm here only to survey these old graves. I'll cause no trouble." A crooked smile bent the old man's face. "Survey?" he echoed, tapping the head of his spade against the ground 3 times. The sound reverberated hollow and strange, not the thud of solid earth, but the echo of a void beneath. This soil does not hold history. It feeds. A chill ran through Michael, but pride in his profession pushed him forward. "If you are the caretaker, then surely you understand the archaeological value of this place. Some of these stones date back to the 17th century, perhaps even earlier." The old man bowed his head, his trembling hand stroking the shaft of the spade. "My name is Elias. I have tended this ground longer than anyone remembers. Those stones tell you nothing. What truly lives here does not rest above the earth." The wind stirred, carrying a rustling like countless hands scratching beneath the soil. Michael froze, his heart hammering. Through the grass, he glimpsed pale shapes, finger bones, writhing upward, retreating just as quickly. He blinked, and they were gone. Only the grass swayed. Elias watched him still, his lips moving as though in prayer. "You should not remain past dark. After sunset, the soil hungers." Michael drew a sharp breath, etching the words into memory, though his rational mind refused surrender. "I need only 1 night of study. Tomorrow morning, if you wish, I'll be gone." Elias regarded him in silence, then let out a low, broken laugh that cracked like brittle bone. "1 night, more than enough for the earth to notice you." He turned and shuffled deeper among the graves, his shadow dissolving into the leaning stones. Michael thought to call after him, but his throat tightened, no sound emerging. The headstones around him seemed to lean closer, their shadows tangling together like skeletal arms reaching outward. By the time the last light drained from the sky, Michael stood alone, the leather notebook open in his shaking hands. In the suffocating dark, only the scratch of his pen on paper could be heard. Yet beneath the damp soil, another sound stirred, an endless rasping, as though hundreds of skeletons breathed in rhythm with him. Ah, noir. Night fell over New England as swiftly as if some unseen hand had snuffed out a vast lantern in the sky. The cemetery drowned beneath a heavy curtain of darkness, lit only by a pale crescent moon, its glow spilling across the crooked stones. Michael stood frozen, pen halted above the page. A strange silence pressed down. No insects, no owls, only the restless wind spiraling through ancient crypts. Then the sound returned. At first it was no more than the patter of pebbles, but it grew, grinding, splintering, the brittle crack of something breaking far beneath the soil. Michael staggered back, eyes locked on the grass at his feet. The earth swelled upward, as though something beneath clawed for release. A sharp snap split the night. From the ground, a shard of bone jutted skyward, pale and glistening under the moonlight. Another followed, curved like a branch. Horror clamped Michael's chest as he realized. Ribs. The branches bent and twisted, joints snapping into place, forming the grotesque outline of a tree clawing its way toward the sky. Not one, dozens. All around him, the earth quivered. Skulls burst from the grass like fruit. Hollow eyes turned toward him. The graveyard writhed, birthing bone trees that groaned as they rose, their skeletal limbs grinding together with a sickening chorus. Michael's breath caught as he stumbled back toward the largest tomb. In the weak moonlight, he saw what made it worse. Many of the trees still clung to tatters of clothing. shoelaces, scraps of fabric, even the glint of a wristwatch. These were not relics of centuries past. They were the remains of the missing. The wind howled, carrying with it a sound more dreadful than any gale. The broken murmur of countless voices. Michael strained to listen, heart pounding, and heard them. Help us! Release us! The earth devours. His legs trembled, but terror chained his eyes to the sight before him. The bone forest climbed higher, trunks weaving into a pale lattice, skulls dangling like rotten fruit, clacking against one another in the cold air. Some rose 10 feet high, their limbs creaking as though eager to embrace him. The cemetery had become a living garden of the damned. Michael turned to flee, but the ground at his back split open too, bone shoots sprouting and snapping shut around him. He was trapped, hemmed in by dozens of reaching trunks. A shudder cut down his spine as one tree nearby bent toward him. Its ribs groaned, splintering as they spread open like fingers ready to seize their prey. The air thickened with the stench of damp earth and the sickly sweetness of rotting flesh. Michael gagged, bile rising in his throat. With a strangled cry, he hurled himself toward the massive tomb at the cemetery's heart. Its stone door hung ajar beneath the moonlight, waiting. He didn't hesitate. He plunged inside and slammed the heavy slab shut behind him. Darkness swallowed him whole. The silence pressed so deep he could hear only the hammering of his own blood. And then, from the depths of the crypt, a whisper unfurled, long and serpentine. You have entered the garden. Michael stiffened, ice coursing through his veins. In that moment he understood. He was no longer an observer. He was part of the soil now. Me, I see. Inside the stone tomb, the darkness was thick as a drowned sea. Michael pressed his back against the heavy door, breath ragged, ears still echoing with the brittle crack of bones outside. The air was rank with mold and the faint iron tang of dried blood, choking his lungs until he thought he might suffocate. He flicked on his flashlight. Its trembling beam cut across damp stone walls slick with moss. But it was not only stone. The surface was carved over and over, a mad tapestry of names etched in desperate haste, hundreds of them, clawed in Latin, Old English, and symbols Michael had never seen before. They sprawled like curses left behind by those who vanished. At the tomb's far end stood an altar. Upon it lay a cracked ceramic vessel brimming with fragments of bone, pale and granular like salt. From the floor, black roots wormed upward, coiling around the remains, feeding on them. Michael staggered back, chilled with realization. The earth here did not merely devour, it cultivated. A rasping voice rose from the shadows behind him. You've seen it now. Michael spun, light quivering across Elias, the gravekeeper, stepping forth from the dark. He still clutched his rusted spade, his coat dragging low, but the beam revealed something worse. His skin was fissured with cracks, in places peeling back to expose the bone beneath. Beneath that wrinkled husk, Elias was little more than another living tree of bone. What are you? Michael stammered. Elias chuckled, the sound sharp as snapping ribs. I am only the sour. You saw the garden outside. The soil thirsts for souls. It devours the dead, but without a hand to tend them, they would wither. I feed them. I watch over them. Michael trembled, yet curiosity forced the words from him. And the missing? They are your trees as well. Elias inclined his head slowly. The wanderers, the sinners, even the curious, like you. Any who set foot upon this land become seed for the garden. That is the covenant. The earth grants me existence, and in return, I plant. Call me monster, if you will. I have only kept my vow. Michael backed away, heart pounding. I can't stay here. Elias advanced, his shadow stretching across the walls, carved with the names of the dead. You are already here. The gate behind you will never open again. The earth has recognized you, and it craves you for its next tree. The flashlight shook in Michael's grip, its beam catching Elias's face. His eyes were no longer eyes at all, only gaping hollows. From his mouth writhed slender bone roots, squirming like parasites. Elias raised the spade, its handle blackened, its blade glinting cold. I do not kill you, he whispered. I plant you. The ground beneath Michael split apart, jagged cracks yawning wide. Skeletal hands thrust up, clutching at his ankles. He screamed, struggling, but the grip only tightened, dragging him inch by inch toward the soil. In that frantic instant, clarity struck him. He had only two paths: surrender to the earth's hunger, or shatter this vile covenant, whatever price it demanded, even if it cost his own life. And Elias stood above him, smiling faintly, the way a farmer smiles as the seed finally sinks into the waiting ground. Ingen, umaya. Michael screamed, wrenching at his legs as skeletal hands clamped tighter, dragging him down. The pull tore his skin open, blood spilling into the soil, hungrily swallowed as if poured onto smoldering ash. Despair crushed his chest, suffocating every breath. No, I don't belong here. He clawed at the stone wall, desperate to resist the earth's hunger. Elias only watched, hollow eyes sinking deeper into shadow, his voice calm and resonant, like a litany whispered at the end of time. You belong to the garden the moment you set foot here. Your blood will enrich the soil. Your bones will bloom into new branches. Do not resist. Let the earth claim you. Michael's frantic gaze darted to the altar. The fractured clay urn lay there, brimming with bone dust, its surface tangled in writhing black roots that trembled like starving veins. A thought pierced his panic. If the garden's existence was bound to that vessel, breaking it might sever the pact. With the last of his strength, he lunged, clutching a jagged stone from the tomb wall. The skeletal hands gripped harder, pulling him waist-deep into the ground, but Michael roared, hurling the rock with all his fury at the urn. It shattered with a violent crack. Fragments flew, bone dust burst into the air like a pale storm. From beneath the earth rose a shriek, thousands of voices howling as one, an unholy choir of souls torn free. The skeletal hands around him convulsed, then loosened their grip. Elias's roar split the chamber, his voice breaking for the first time. You fool! You do not understand what you've done. The tomb quaked. The ceiling split, stones raining down. Michael scrambled free, dragging himself toward the sealed door. His hand pressed against the cold slab, then froze. His fingers were no longer flesh, but bare white bone, the skin shriveled and peeling away. He looked down in horror. His legs too were changing, skin splitting open, bones stretching outward like gnarled roots. The price of breaking the covenant was not freedom, but transformation. A seed, stronger, hungrier, was taking root. Elias writhed in the collapsing dark, yet laughter rasped from his withering throat. Did you think you escaped? No. You have only taken my place. Michael's scream curdled into the cracking of bone. His body bent and warped, limbs driving deep into the soil, veins hardening into root, joints twisting into branches. His mind dimmed, hollowed, until only the hunger remained, spreading, devouring, eternal. By dawn, the graveyard stood silent, cloaked in mist. The bone trees towered motionless, their pale branches gleaming like ivory. At the garden's heart rose a new trunk, its limbs stark white, and from them dangled a broken pen and a blood-stained notebook. The garden of bone had claimed another, and it would never cease to grow. Known. I remember the first time I heard about the Midnight Cult was on a rainy evening when my friends and I were hanging out at a small coffee shop in town. That night, none of us thought that our banter would lead to an experience we would never forget. As I scrolled through my phone, I came across an article about a mysterious group of people living in this town. They were called the Midnight Cult. Bizarre stories of strange rituals, unexplained disappearances, and possessed souls were all in the art. I immediately handed the phone to the group. Look at this. I just found a super weird story. A secret society called the Midnight Cult. I hear they hold rituals at midnight in this town. Jack's eyes lit up. That sounds interesting. I've never heard of them. What do they do? Ethan shrugged. It's probably just a bunch of fiction. Don't believe these things. They're just rumors. Mia was cautious. But what if there really is some secret society that does some kind of supernatural ritual? I don't think we should get involved. But the more I heard, the more I learned, the more my group of friends and I were drawn in. No one could deny that the name the Midnight Cult had created such a great curiosity that we couldn't stop thinking about it. Especially when we found information about a ceremony tonight, right in our town. And I, despite having a bad feeling, still couldn't give up. I lowered my voice. I think we should go find out. Anyway, if it's just a rumor, we have nothing to lose.
What was that?
Jack
Did you
was
hear that?
excited. That's right. I can't miss this opportunity. Let's go. Mia worried. Come on, guys. We can't just go there like that. Maybe things aren't as simple as we think. We decided to go. No one in the group really wanted to give up. And even though I had a strange feeling, I still went with them. This feeling, I think, was a combination of curiosity and fear. Every step I took in the dark night felt like a step closer to the inexplicable. When we reached the abandoned house they described, things became even stranger. The house was old, the walls were broken, the windows were broken, and a cold atmosphere hung everywhere. It looked like a house abandoned for a long time, but there was a strange life in it. Ethan whispered, "This is the place. What should we do now?" Jack looked around. "We should go in." "Don't worry, we'll just observe." The door to the house creaked as we opened it, and the air inside was so cold it felt like we were entering another world. A few of the group were starting to feel uneasy, but they continued to follow me. The flashlight on their phones only illuminated a narrow, dark hallway. Jack laughed. "It's probably just a joke. Just keep going." We walked further inside, and then we heard a sound. Strange. It was music, but not any music we'd ever heard. It had an eerie sound, making me shiver. And then I realized that the sound wasn't coming from a radio or a speaker, but from a ritual. Mia shivered. "We have to go now, Lily. This isn't a joke." I paused for a moment and then stepped into a room. I felt like something was telling me to do it. A circle of people in black robes stood around a fire, muttering prayers I didn't understand. In the middle of the circle stood a man wearing a black robe and a hood that covered his face. When the light fell on him, I felt an invisible force surrounding him, and I knew immediately that we shouldn't be here. Lucas whispered, "Let's go. What are they doing?" But before we could retreat, the man with the hood turned and looked straight at us. His cold eyes seemed to pierce through me. My whole body froze, and I felt like something terrible was about to happen. Lily trembled. "Go now. We have to get out of here." We hurried away, but as we reached the door, I heard a whisper in my ear. We couldn't escape them. A shadowy figure stood in the darkness, watching our every move. When we left the house, no one said anything. That strange feeling still lingered in me. But I knew we had seen something that no one could explain. The group was silent, only the sound of our heavy footsteps in the dark. I couldn't sleep. The strange feeling after that night followed me all night long. The cold eyes of the man in the abandoned house did not leave my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about the whispers in the wind. We had just witnessed a strange ritual. But what scared me the most was I couldn't understand why there was such a terrifying power in this town. The next morning, I met my friends at the coffee shop. Everyone looked tired and worried. They didn't say much, but there was a fear in their eyes that I couldn't deny. Mia looked at me with worried eyes. "Lily, do you feel like you can't leave that place? Like something is watching us?" Jack's face paled. "Yeah, I can't shake the feeling that they're watching us. I've never seen anything like it." Ethan pondered. "But why us? They won't leave us alone. I have a feeling this isn't as simple as a joke." Lucas shook his head, trying to laugh. "No way. We must have imagined it." But I knew, despite everyone's efforts to act calm, we were all scared. I was starting to feel like something bigger was coming. It wasn't just curiosity, but something that was pulling us into a spiral we couldn't escape. Mia began to feel strange things happening around her. She told me that she had strange dreams where she saw herself standing in a circle, like what we had witnessed in the house yesterday. But this time, she wasn't just standing there. She seemed to be participating in the ritual. Mia trembled. "Lily, I can't take it anymore. It feels like something is waiting for me, and I can't control it." As time went on, we felt more and more haunted. One evening, I received a strange text message from an unknown number. The message had only one sentence: "We're not done yet." I felt frozen in place. It wasn't a threat, but an affirmation that they knew we were there, and we couldn't escape. I whispered to myself, "What should we do now?" We decided to go back to the abandoned house. None of us wanted to do it, but we knew that only by doing so could we find out the truth about the Midnight Cult. I couldn't stop thinking about that message and the feeling that someone was watching us every step of the way. Did they really know everything about us?